Yeah.
I love my HBCU. And boy, I love it, love it. I love it, love it. I love my HBCU. And man, I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. Yeah, man. I hope my team they won one. I hope my team they won one. I tune into the HBCU Sports Lab to see if my team won or lost. If they lost, I'm quiet as a mouse. But if they won, keep tab. I'ma do the dab, yeah. Dr. Cavil, he know what he be talking about. Mike and Charles, they know what they be talking about. They compress the analytic data with the hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they won or lost, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Cavil with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Well, maybe not. Mike Washington and Charles Bishop are on assignment, literally. So I have the next best to me is Stephen Gaither, founder of HBCU Gameday, the team that he does down there. He's working overtime. I mean, he has a couple of podcasts he's doing, along with writing to make sure that we stay informed on the HBCU framework. So I appreciate you, Gaither, committing your time. And obviously, you've made this a life challenge in terms of how you make your living. So to be able to do that, I appreciate you getting it done from that perspective. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Doc. I appreciate you and the chance to be on the platform, especially after my last video. So nice. It's definitely a pleasure to be here, and it's the most wonderful time of the year. I walked outside of my door here in Winston-Salem earlier this afternoon, and it felt like fall. And I'm a fall baby, so I'm in heaven right now.
Man, good stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna give you a little shout out with that video, and I appreciate you for texting me. It got me in trouble because I'm laughing in my office. The administrative assistant is like, "Man, what is going on with him?" But for those that don't know, go check out. What is it?
WSSU Ram Nation.
Rams. Go check that out on YouTube. And there's a video where he does some breakdowns of several of the content creators that some call media personalities out there as well, and journalists who talk about HBCU sports. And he went and made sure he basically didn't leave pretty much anybody out in terms of running the game, particularly those that call ourselves, if you would, talking about HBCU D2 perspectives. And, one of the things I pushed from the very beginning, Gaither will say that I have, that we need to make sure we cover all HBCUs. Obviously, I live in SWAC country, so I'm much more familiar with that. And it's easy for me to get to those games, particularly in Texas with Prairie View and Texas Southern right here. So I tend to focus and are a little more heavy about that. And you'll see a lot of folks are kind of regionally based. It's just the way it is. When I talk about the sporting HBCU diaspora. And I'll get to the official intro, but I want to do this. This is important because it's funny, and it is done in a very classy form. And we need things that are able to keep us laughing in this time like this. But so you got HBCU Sports out there. You got HBCU Nightly inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Hope I don't leave anybody out. And you basically went through there, and everybody decided they were going to talk about Winston-Salem State and North Carolina A&T with the game coming up. And for those that don't realize, there is some gurus in here on CIAA. There are some gurus out there on the SIAC. And we'll have them on our show periodically. We have AD that does a deep dive in the SIAC. His connection with Tuskegee coming out there and love he has there. He focused that. He has a lot of intrigue about that. He also makes sure that he shows some love with the NIA program, Stephen Gaither, in terms of what he does with CIAA. We got Kindric Hooks that does a lot of work in terms of the SIAC. And we also have my man that does D2 across the board in terms of getting that done, Chris Ferguson, or Chris Fergus, some people refer to him, with his roots in the CIAA. These folks know what they're talking about when you talk about D2. So sometimes if we're not careful, we talk about the large media that ignores HBCU. Sometimes those bigger media platforms or other media platforms that focus on the FCS HBCU programs, D1, kind of skirt our paths and act like we want to talk about D2 and we get it wrong. Well, Stephen Gaither made sure everybody noticed that they might need to do the homework sitting out here on the landscape. But he did it in a very comedic fashion, even though I know there was some seriousness about it. We need to make sure we're doing what we need to do. So shout out to you for that. Go check it out again on YouTube. WSSU Rams. That's Winston-Salem State University Rams. Good stuff. Shout out to
WSSU Ram Nation. That's what it is. Yeah. Appreciate you, Doc.
Nation. Let me put that on there. Let me get it right. Because I don't want to be on no more video. He didn't do me bad. I tried. See, I know to stay in my face.
You were facilitating. Nah. Everybody that I put in the video is someone I had a level of interaction with all of those folks on all those platforms. So, like I said, it's all love, it's all fun. It also
that's what makes it so funny.
Yeah, it also did make me more cognizant too of, you talk about people's teams, and there's a level of detachment that can be, and so most of the time I hear stuff and I kind of just let it go off my back, but this particular matchup,
not today.
It's a little bit different. Yeah, I had, in the words of a former Jackson State coach, I had time today. So,
no doubt. Welcome to episode 542 of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab radio show and podcast. As you see, it's going to be a fun one. The show that's covering the sporting HBCU dash for all things HBCU sports for institutions large and small. From the NAIA to the NCAA, we share insights and information on the HBCU sports culture, HBCU athletic aesthetics, to facilitate the story of HBCU athletic programs in the business of HBCU sports. I'm your host, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, along with my co-host, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. They're out on assignment, getting it done. We're filming from our home studios and sending a signal live to Case-Wade's 1230 AM studios with the Texas Radio Hall of Famer, Ralph Cooper. That's multi-Hall of Famer, in a beautiful home at Texas Southern University from Houston, Texas, right here. Today's episode of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab is sponsored by THG Agency. THG Agency is a company that provides sporting and educational and consulting and data analytics. Let me give a shout out to Dave that debuted on our Wednesday edition of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab, where we look at the independents in terms of that. We're looking at trying to do something on Monday to make sure we can do what Stephen Gaither does, to make sure we give the appropriate focus on our D2 programs, and then we'll even do something it looks like on Friday. So as we look to fill out the whole week where you can get inside the HBCU Sports Lab with different voices right here, keep up with us because we're going to continue to do this. And you see the special guests we bring in here to make sure you get the flavor of what it means to understand the HBCU sports culture. Again, shout out to ONG Strike Zone as they had a Winston-Salem State.
My guy, my classmate, yeah, B-Dot.
B-Dot, he did it. I love that. I was like, I take that and put it out there. Everybody in this HBCU culture space that's an AD and understands the culture from HBCU fans, particularly with particular deep cultures from an institution, when they go to make some hires, this is a video they need to show to understand what the fans are asking for when you talk about connection and of being appreciative of the roots, carrying on, creating a new legacy and moving it forward. That is one that everybody needs to see from that perspective. He hit a home run.
Yeah, B-Dot's amazing. About the time I got to school at WSSU, he was like already the man. He talked about his first game 20 years ago where, Winston-Salem State was playing Catawba University. Is located right down the road, about 40 minutes, a private PWI. It was his first game. He was new. He was still really raw, and he went out there and he kind of hammed it up, as he will admit to you. John Dell, who covers Winston-Salem State, wrote a story about how the presidents at the other school said he would never play us again as long as he was the PA announcer. So for me, it's just been great to watch him grow and evolve in that space. He's a great guy. I count him as a friend, and I just always love to see people that I went to school with doing big things. It's amazing. So I knew they were going to give him some trouble when he first got down there, and they got on him quick. But he's going to learn. He's going to adjust, and I don't know if you can swim with the snakes, but he's going to figure out how to roll around with them.
Yeah, that's right. He'll get in the mud and the dirt. He'll get it down. His comparison to MEAC to the SWAC with the cousin, that was just hilarious, funny, and accurate in some ways. Just my opinion. I know everybody has their own, and you can tell he knows how to kill with the carry. He's a professional. I've seen him over there to Chris Paul a couple of times doing his things, and I've met him through you, and I've watched some of his videos that he's done with you as well under HBCU Gameday. Brilliant, very talented. With that being said, let me get to you. Get your thoughts on some news of the day that you want to highlight before we get into the poll rankings. Top 7 mid-major edition for the D2 NAIA program.
Yeah, well, I think, everyone who is in the HBCU space, we're in the football season, the Orange Blossom Classic, Alabama State, North Carolina Central was a game that a lot of people were looking forward to. The predicted number 1 team and the MEAC predicted number 1 team out in the SWAC, getting a chance to meet up. And then also, Andrew Body, who spent his time over there with you guys at Texas Southern, played 1 game last year, got injured, got in the transfer portal, got to Alabama State. With that defense, everything that they had going on, everyone was really looking forward to what could happen and maybe seeing finally a SWAC championship come back to Montgomery. But not to say that it can't happen, but right now things are in peril, and it looks like for the 2nd year in a row that Andrew Body is going to see his season, unfortunately, end after 1 game. Just really heartbreaking for the young man. I've only met him a couple times at SWAC Media Day, and but he seems like a nice young man, and obviously very talented. A lot of people are very high on him, and it was unfortunate to see him go down the way that he did, and didn't look good then. And obviously we see now the shoulder surgery. He's going to have to shut things down for this year again, and it's just heartbreaking. I know earlier on College Game Day they did a profile on one of the Miami tight ends who's had all these different injuries and things, but you just hate that for a young man who's putting all the time and effort into rehab and follow his dreams and have some really great talent, and to see for 2 years in a row for it to happen, I know that can be a really crushing thing. So my thoughts are with him for sure, him and his family for sure, and we'll see how this comes into factor with their big D1 D2 matchup this weekend. So, but obviously I think that's kind of the big thing in the forefront of everybody's mind right now in HBCUs. Yeah,
great stuff. I was contacted for a quote in a Game Day article in terms of what that looks like. So I'm glad you brought up Andrew Body. I've had the opportunity being a professor here, dean during that time, associate dean while he was here, to meet with him and talk with him. Extremely respectful, mindful, work with my son in some ways. So he's a brilliant young man. And that article is by Vaughn Wilson, I should say, in terms of that quote. So I can't wait to read it. I'm sure it dropped in terms of that. And I agree with you in terms of your sentiments, in terms of hating to hear that for any athlete, but particularly in terms of HBCU area where we focus, his ability to navigate the space on the social media platform through his family was really different. We haven't seen anything like that. And some people probably appreciate it. Some people don't. His ability to navigate and kind of control the media perspective for those do that. And I think it took him a different way. So I imagine it's going to hit people a little different than you normally do when you talk about athletes that get injured, particularly it being back-to-back years after the first game. Tough losses in both of the games. Some eerie similarities in terms of being big games, One was a conference game in terms of Prairie View and Texas Southern last year. And then this year you get to go to a classic, Orange Blossom Classic. And you make big plays in both of those games. And you get injured essentially for the year, it sounds like, in terms of what's going out. So it is really heartfelt to really feel for that young man and his family. I wish him the best, healthy, great in terms of his academics, so help he can continue to push forward if he chooses to come back in the situation that works out for him. So with that being said, we're going to take our first break. We'll come back on the other side, and then we'll get into the top 7 poll rankings. Stephen, we're going to see what you say with my poll rankings. I do want to point this out. Okay? Kindric Hooks, and you said a little bit about this too, since we're ribbing today, talked about the rat poison I end up had was with Clark Atlanta University ranked 4. Well, it's played on the field.
Right.
It worked out for me playing on the field. So we're going to see where they rank this week. But everybody was saying, no. I said, watch out for this team. It look better than what y'all think. I think with that, we'll take our first break and come back on the other side. The old Dean got a little bit of something up his sleeve. We'll be right back after this first break.
Choice Hotels is a family of brands that helps you get the most for your money so you can be any traveler you want to be.
You could be a free hot breakfast hero at a comfort hotel.
Yes!
That's how you waffle.
Mr. This Script got a plot twist at a Radisson hotel.
A business big leaguer.
Go for key.
Even the ultimate pool float inflator.
With 22 brands and the best value for your money, Choice Hotels has a stay for any you. Book direct at choicehotels.com, where travels come true.
Gotta get the corners.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted CAVIL'S voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KEAVERSVOICE.com. CAVIL'S Voice, CAVIL'S Voice, CAVIL'sVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentJAX.
Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working.
Never not working. Never ever not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield, never not working.
You're looking for the latest information on Southern University sports, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, and HBCU athletics. There's only one place to go. Tune in to the Carlos Brown Show, exclusively on the Black College Sports.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna lose, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gonna teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bills inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. They're out on assignment, so I have none other than Steve Gaither and Kindric Hooks, that's D2 HBCU Football. You can check them out both on Twitter. I still call it Twitter. I know it's X. I just gonna do what I do. Y'all have to eat me up later. With that being said, Kindric, it's time to unveil the top 7. But before you get too excited, I just want to remind you, and I'm intrigued when you got this Bears behind you, so I think you're trying to send a message. I do like that. But or you either lost the bet, one or the other. That being said, I just want to remind you a little bit that I had you on a couple of weeks ago, and I did my preseason top 7. And, you know, you the D2 guy. So I respect what y'all had to say, you and Steven. And y'all let me know quite early that I need to be careful with my top 7. It was so good that a coach even came in and said, man, slow down. Call it rat boys. But, you know, that team happened to win in week 0. So I'm just saying, a little bit. Went on the road with a conference game and won. I also know that y'all don't like the CIAA SIC matchup. But I just happen to know that the CIAA put a weapon on the SIC. You said something about the Kentucky State program was going to. Yeah. I just wanted to remind you a little bit. That's all right. Hold your head up. You good. We're going to get into this poll ranking. We'll let you come back a little later and do your thing. I thought you was hiding out there the first second. I say he won't come back home.
No, I was going to come.
Well, let's get into it. All kidding aside, we have 4 teams that dropped out of last week. That happens early in the poll rankings when things happen. And we'll get in to show you this top 7. But let me tell you about these teams that dropped out, those receiving votes, and then we'll get you to this top 7, Johnson C. Smith. Dropped out was Fayetteville State Broncos, Miles Golden Bears that fell to 0-1, tough loss. Benedict Tigers that also fell to the 0-1, tough loss. Fort Valley State, the team that lost to the team I'm referencing. Hooks, Mr. Hooks, are 0-1. Fayetteville State Broncos, receiving votes. Langston Lions are receiving votes as long as the Florida Memorial Lions. As you see, Tuskegee is no longer in the picture because of a tough loss they have, and it happened to be to the number 17. Johnson C. Smith, the Golden Bulls, are 1-0, 142 ranked points. They were not ranked last week. They defeated Tuskegee in their own, Tuskegee's own classic, basically, the Red Tails Classic, and got a tough victory. I actually watched that game. It was very entertaining, going back and forth, but unfortunately for Hooks, it didn't work out the way that I'm sure that he wanted it to. At number 6, we got the Shaw Bears coming in at 1-0, 156 points, not ranked. As you'll see, winning early in this poll means something. I know a lot of folks get into this FBS, FCS, D2, whatever. The first qualification that you need in these computer rankings is to win. Then we look at strength and schedule, road victories, home victories. But it's something to me about the sports where winning means something to this day. I know some of y'all like to do these participation trophies, but that's for another show. And number 5, Winston-Salem State Rams. And I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it, Steve. I watched the show. All those other folks are saying the fighting something. I'm not going to say that. Not no more. I know that much. Shout out to the Rams, though. They made a statement coming in 1-0, 163 points. They were not ranked. They find their way to jump in the top 7 at number 5. Bringing us to number 4, we're going to go back to the SIAC. Everwater Tigers got a win over the Maroon Tigers. It seems like everybody seems to find a win over Maroon Tigers over the last couple of years, except for Clark Atlanta. But there's a new sheriff in town for those Clark Atlanta Panthers who were ranked 4 last week. But guess what? They are ranked now with their win, moving up to number 3. Clark Atlanta Panthers are 1-0, not just overall, but in conference play. They have 2 first-place votes with 196 points, ranked number 4. At number 2, Virginia State Trojans are 1-0. They had a tougher contest than people may have thought. I thought Benedict would play well, but I thought they held their own. Virginia State still won the game, and we'll see what that means as we'll talk about in the third segment some of the FCS D2 matchups this weekend, and I'm going to be very intrigued what these individuals say. Are there any upset potentials out there? If there's indication in terms of Hooks, it looks like he may be sending a message where he thinks an upset may exist. We'll see what that means from his perspective a little later on as well. At number 1, Virginia Union Panthers. They may have made the biggest statement this week in terms of the score. They took Kentucky State to the woodshed, 1-0, 5 first-place votes, 221 points, first place. We debuted our Wednesday version of the show in terms of Dave and coming and representing the Aggies. We have Brandon with the Tennessee State, and we have 2 guys that will split coverage as they have their own podcast representing Hampton. They got into a little bit about this matchup between Virginia Union and Hampton, and also looked at Winston-Salem State and A&T. So, Stephen, you get a chance to do a little rebuttal. So we'll see what you.
Yeah, I watched this afternoon. I watched this afternoon.
I figured you did.
They was typical arrogant Aggie. I mean, I get it.
You get it. With that being said, I've muzzled Kindric enough. Hooks, it's your time. I'm going to let you go first and then let Stephen Gaither get some shine and give me his thoughts on the top 7. So, Kindric, what are your thoughts? in terms of my top 7 in week 1 coming after week 0?
I think Virginia Union proved why they should be one. I think they made a really big statement against Kentucky State that really didn't have an excuse to look like that. They have a really experienced squad up there, and they just shouldn't have looked like that against Virginia Union. Watched that game, went back, tried to watch it again, fell asleep on it because it was just so much Virginia Union dominance. I fell asleep the second time trying to watch it because it was just it was Virginia Union. I know this is week 0, but when you start looking at teams that in the past that can make playoff type runs, and you look at the types of teams that won the Division II playoff last year, I think Virginia Union is right there in that vein. And so I think that they completely made me out of a believer of what they do up there, Virginia Union land. You can drop Edward Waters out. I know Dr. Faison will kill me for that. I know you said winning, but it was Morehouse. I mean, and then Morehouse turned the ball over 9 times. I mean, if you don't win after with 9 turnovers, then who can you beat? I think I was expecting a little more out of Edward Waters this week. You know, it is what it is. I'm gonna be honest with you. I like Teddy Keaton. Teddy Keaton is my guy, and I know Sly's in here, and I'm really big on David Wright and their offense. I'm just not there. I understand putting top 7. I'm just not there yet, and I'll be honest.
That's where you're looking holistically. This is a week-to-week poll. I like to remind everybody things can change, particularly early in the season. Win here, lost there. It's turbulent. You can fall out of the top 7 in the first couple of weeks, jump in the top 7 because of wins. It stabilizes around 4 or 5, and you can see a couple of movements. Some people might go on a slide. Some people go on a roll. So I think it's fair to say that, you know, where you are in terms of clock Atlanta. And I appreciate the fact you said right now they can be in the top 7, which is different than last week. So at least you're coming around.
And that defense of John C. Smith, you can put them up. You can switch 4 and 7. You can put John C. Smith at 4.
Okay.
You know, I will tell you, I was not pleasantly surprised. I was disturbingly surprised at the physicality of the defense of John C. Smith. And I'll just go on record, and I've said this a few times, and if you go back, Aaron coach the SIAC, a lot of coaches have shows now, the Aaron James show. He'll tell you, like, I don't think anybody in the Tuskegee camp expected John C. Smith to have that much talent on defense and be that physical. And I think they just punched us in the mouth real quick, and we just was shell-shocked.
Good stuff. Stephen, what do you say about the top 7 in week 0?
Yeah, I think Kindric kind of pretty much hit it on the head. Virginia Union from the start, I just felt like that's exactly where they would be. I feel like this is the CIAA's getting their lick back from sending Shaw to play Benedict last year. It was that type of matchup. You know, somebody who's, you know, they're going to play hard, but they're not going to win the SIAC championship. They're not going to be in the Final Four. And they took up on a team that, you know, is a defending champion. And so it showed. And I think, too, unfortunately for the folks, for the thoroughbreds, you know, you're talking about they took them to the woodshed. They took them behind the woodshed and shot them. And I think a lot of that is on the voters in the CIAA for voting Virginia State over Virginia Union, even though Virginia Union is the defending CIAA champion and they brought back a lot. Virginia State solid over Benedict. We don't know how good Benedict is yet, but Virginia State, they did what they were supposed to do. You know, Clark Atlanta, I watched the game just like everybody else. I'm a fan. When you had them 4, I thought they was way too high as well. But you know, I enjoyed the game too. But I'm with Kindric. That 3-4 slap that you have, I would say, as much as it pains me to say this, Johnson C. Smith probably deserves to be up there, given who they played. You know, this is not Kindric's favorite Tuskegee, but they're still Tuskegee, They were in Alabama, and Johnson. I mean, you can't get any further apart in football pedigree than Tuskegee and Johnson C. Smith. And but I think the thing we have to realize, and look, my Rams look every year, no matter how bad we've been since 1996, we can count on beating those folks over at Beatty's Ford Road, but that is no longer the case. They have a coach who's an alumnus, Coach Flowers, who's seasoned, and they have a full allotment of scholarships, and they are not to be toyed with. I think Tuskegee found that out early on, so I would put them up there for the Bears, Edward Waters, the Bears, and even my Rams should enjoy being where they are right now. I don't know. I don't know. I look at who all those teams beat. Elizabeth City State. I mean, that was the floor. Edward Waters beat Morehouse. You know what that was, and Winston-Salem State beat Bluefield State. I'm just happy that they went on the road and won, solidly. Those three teams. I don't know about if you're going to see them, but I think these other four will continue to be in the top four. And I guess I can't really be mad at you guys for dropping Fayetteville State off for not even playing right now. Just give them a little humble pie. Hopefully, it'll be a theme for the season. So yeah.
Man, I love it. I love all the little juice and the slants that are going here. With that being said, as we get prepared to close out this segment, get to the next segment, we're going to talk about some matchups in this upcoming weekend. I thought it was fascinating, just how it played out. Obviously, CIAA, if I have it correct, had 3 games against the SIAC, won all 3 of them in that fashion. But in terms of the top 7, of the 17s, 5 of them are out of the CIAA. Again, this first week is early. And according to you all, I like the way that you're discussing it. You're saying the top 3, 4 should be CIAA at this point. So that's fascinating as well. Certainly you agree with the top 2 teams. So be intriguing to kind of see what this looks like week to week. How this plays out this week with some big non-conference games. We'll get into that in segment 4. But with that being said, let's take our second break. We'll come back on the other side, and we're going to talk about some of these FCS HBCU matchups against the D2 HBCU matchups and just see what these gentlemen think about those matchups. And again, in segment 4, we'll talk about some of the D2 conference games as well as non-conference matchups, and let them chop that up and see what is important and what you should keep your eyes on at the D2 level. With that, we'll be right back after this second break.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit HBCUPrideJoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
Hey, grab me one too.
Charmin Ultra Soft has so much cushiony softness, it's hard for your family to remember they can use less.
Sweet pillows of softness.
This is soft.
Holy Charmin. Oh, excuse me. Roll it back, everybody. Sorry.
Charmin Ultra Soft is so cushiony soft, you'll want more, but it's so absorbent, you can use less, so it's always worth it.
Now, what did we learn about using less?
You gotta roll everybody.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavil of Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavil's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bill with Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Stephen and Kindric. That is Stephen Gaither and Kindric Hooks, bringing you update in terms of Inside the HBCU Sports Lab and giving some great information. This segment I'm very intrigued about for various different reasons, but this is oddity of the week. We obviously see early in the non-conference season matchups that feature D2 HBCU programs, and of late you see FCS playing FBS programs. You see some D2 programs playing NAIA. But this is the first time I can recall over a short period of time when you saw so many HBCU matchups that feature D2 versus FCS D1. And so, Stephen Gaither, you recall a bigger weekend than this in terms of the number of programs?
I can't think so in quite a while. Again, we'll get to the specific games, but I just remember looking on the schedule, knowing that Winston-Salem State will take on A&T for the first time in like 14 years over in Greensboro, and I knew that that's going to be a huge game. And then Virginia State and Norfolk State, they played each other off and on over the last couple of decades since Norfolk State's moved over, and then Hampton and Virginia Union got it started a couple years back. So I felt like those three games, man, I would have loved for those that have been spread out. I've been to all of those games, and they're great games. Wow. Yeah, so it's really exciting over here on the East Coast.
You remember over a period of time, this many games on the same weekend that are featuring these D2 FCS matchups, if you would? So,
yeah, not on the same weekend. I mean, the SIC schools normally play, lately. They've been playing a lot of FCS schools. Most of them have two sometimes, but on the same weekend, no. I want to say that week 0 may have something to do with it. Haven't been able to put a bye week on your schedule. So we'll see.
That's a great point. Now, I do want to shout out while I teach you about your background. Obviously, on the shirt, you have Alabama State. You are representing the Hornets there. So I want to make sure people know that I didn't want to leave the Mighty Hornets out because they are already feeling a little something right now. So I don't want to do that to them. But to all your points, there's 8 matchups. There are 5 out of the SWAC that feature SIAC SWAC, if you would. There is one, I should say, in the versus MEAC versus CIAA. And then there are 2 versus the Colonial, now the Coastal Athletics Association, CIAA. We call them the independent programs, which features, as you mentioned, Stephen, Hampton and Virginia Union, as well as North Carolina A&T and Winston-Salem State. So I wanted you all to break some of those matchups. What are your thoughts on them? You can go in featuring yourself. But my first question, before you kind of break them down, I'm going with you, Stephen, first. Of those 5 matchups, and let me put them out there to make sure that everybody's clear on them. You have the Virginia State, Norfolk State you mentioned, which is a CIAA versus MEAC matchup. You have a Miles College versus Alabama State. It's SIAC and SWAC. You also have Kentucky State, Alabama A&M, SIAC and SWAC. You have a very historic matchup in terms of the brand of the programs, wins across the name. And it was just fascinating when people were breaking down in terms of Coach Abbott of Tuskegee taking on Eddie Robinson of Grambling when the last time they played. That's Tuskegee going to Grambling, SIAC SWAC. You also have Lane at Jackson State, a SIAC SWAC matchup. You have Virginia Union versus Hampton. That's the CIAA taking on the CAA. Winston-Salem State, North Carolina A&T, that you also mentioned, Stephen, which is CIAA versus the CAA. And lastly, we have the Savannah State at Southern matchup, another SIAC focusing on and taking on the road a SWAC team in Southern. Of those matchups, Stephen, which one do you see, before we break them down maybe a little bit, which one do you see are two potential upsets and why?
I see three potential upsets that I feel really good about saying. One that I'm praying about, but the other I'm saying. Virginia Union, obviously, they finished the NCAA champions. We saw what they did last week to Kentucky State. And obviously Hampton is not Kentucky State. They're a Division I program. But they got run gushed last week against Morgan State. They let them just kind of run crazy on them. And so if you know anything about Virginia Union, they love to run the ball with Jada Byers. And they have a couple other backs as well. They have they built their head coach, Dr. Alvin Parker, is a former running back. So, he believes in having that strong offensive line and running the ball. They've got some guys who, are D1-ish in terms of being on their line on both sides. And so I think that is a game where, you definitely would look for that. Virginia State and Norfolk State last year, obviously Virginia State got the win. Kind of crazy ending, but they got the win. And then also Alabama State and Miles, last year they got that win as well. So I think those three, honestly, I think if any of those three happened, I would not be shocked. I mean, the D1 teams, they're supposed to win. They have more scholarships and all that stuff, but I would not be shocked if any of those teams won.
Same question for you, Kindric. Do you have a couple of games that you see that you would favor in terms of not being shocked at the proverbial upset or with the D2 defeating a D1 FCS program this weekend?
Yeah, I think after last weekend, I agree with Stephen, that Virginia Union team, they just look like a really quality Division II team. And we know that quality Division II teams, FCS teams, yeah, they better watch out. I think Hampton is gonna have their hands full with Virginia Union. And I don't care that they are Division I. That's a lot to get prepared for. It's a type of offense that they don't see all the time. Like it's a lot. And they do what they do well. And I think there is another added aspect that I wasn't expecting from Virginia Union, because you can't do anything with those running backs. They can get you over the top this year. That was something that I felt like they were missing, and which kind of handicapped them last season. But I think that they have a complete package. And we talk about the offensive line, but they have a heck of a defensive line over at Virginia Union. And they just outmatched Kentucky State from down one. I know it won't be that easy playing against a Hampton team, but I like their chances. I also think just Miles in general, and this is even outside of Body being there, I think Miles is just consistently, even when Miles is at their worst, they are a tough matchup for Bama State. You talking about the team that went 1-9 with Sam Shade that year, still took Bama State to the very end, and that's been consistent for quite some time. I think it also speaks a little bit to like how they recruit. Those guys, they went to high school with each other. There's a lot of pride that goes into playing those two institutions. They kind of swap players out sometime through the portal. So I think that's going to be another possible one. And I guess I'm copying off Steven today because I'm praying for one. I'm praying that my Tigers go down there and smack those other Tigers down there so I can troll yard talk all week on Twitter.
Good stuff. Let me stick with you and ask you. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Tuskegee at Grambling. What are your thoughts in terms of the matchup? Maybe some of the history in terms of the brand, or just the matchup itself?
I mean, I hope we getting paid for it. I hope we getting our money worth for it. Been on this whole thing about. I see people on Twitter talking about they're complaining about FAMU's band getting $40K, but yet you got a lot of these SWAC schools paying, like Lane got paid $35,000 to go play A&M last year. That's not enough for me to get on the bus. So hopefully that we got to the north of 50K this year. Yeah, we need 100K for these games to go down there to play Grambling. So that's my first thought about it. But like the historical makeup of Grambling, our institutions are tied to each other. When those farmers wrote Booker T. Washington for the help and everything that's tied to Lewis Adams and the Adams family, which is the real connection down there with Grambling. It's just a real historical matchup. It's been a long time coming, to see the two play, but we'll just see how it is.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Stephen Gaither, I'd be remiss with you if I didn't get this kind of good time and asked you to give a little thought and insight. I know you've kind of pushed around and joked about it, but you can talk about it from a serious perspective too. What are your thoughts in terms of the Winston-Salem State, North Carolina A&T, that people in this area may not realize the importance of this matchup? It goes back to the CIAA days. There was also a period where it's actually people may not realize that it was a MEAC matchup when Winston-Salem State was doing their transition and was a member of the MEAC before they decided to move back down to D2 in the CIAA.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time studying, just HBCU sports in general. And recently, as this game was coming up, studying this. And so, yes, it does go back to the CIAA, but it actually goes back even further than that. I found out this week from an article that came out from the North Carolina A&T Alumni Association that actually back in the 1890, a man named Simon Green Atkins, he went to college. This is how in North Carolina, how there's so much connectivity between HBCUs. He went to St. Augustine's College. He worked at Livingstone College, and then he was a school teacher in Winston-Salem. Over in Raleigh, Shaw University had a school in their basement that was burgeoning called North Carolina A&T. And Simon Green Atkins tried to get North Carolina A&T a land grant. He tried to get it to come to Winston-Salem. But It went on the other side of the county. It went on the other side of the county line to Guilford County. And that's where we have North Carolina A&T established in 1891. In 1892, he establishes Slater Industrial, which becomes Winston-Salem Teachers College, which becomes Winston-Salem State College, and now Winston-Salem State University. So, these guys have been playing us to the left since before we were at school, so it's it's one of those things where we're all in the same area. There's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of, Rams and Aggies that are going to go to bed together tonight in marital bliss. And so it crosses all of those lines. But, they've always been the farm school, right? They've always been the agricultural school, had the big husky guys, and obviously, that comes with benefits when you're talking about southern states in getting funding. And we've been to teachers college, right? A lot of women, not as big a guys. So they dominated the football part of this for the first 30 years. We won 18 games, but since Bill Hayes came around, we made it a series. And it's just really about a pride thing. I mean, we're really literally like a county over. So we're literally in our backyard, they're in their backyard. And so, we play nice, too nice sometimes, but these guys think they're better than us. And so it's a pride thing. So it's D1, D2. Yeah. I mean, yeah, they look better against Wake Forest last week, but God, that was a low bar. We played Bluefield State. We played who was on our calendar. We beat them. We'll see him on Saturday.
I like that. Great stuff. Let's take our last break. We'll come back on the other side, and we'll talk about some of these other conference matchups between the CIAA, SIAC, and non-conference games where you have some HBCU historically white college matchups and see what these gentlemen think. Which one of these may be some of the most important matchup, either in conference or non-conference. One, obviously, when you talk about the D2 programs, CIAA, SIAC, these non-conference matchups become particularly more important when you're thinking about the seeding or opportunity to get at-large bids to the playoffs, which both of these gentlemen educated me a couple of weeks ago in just how largely important that is. So we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about that in our next and last segment. Stick with us. We'll be back after this last break.
At Automasters LLC, our mission is to serve our community by providing quality automobiles at affordable prices. All of our vehicles are inspected and certified to offer you the confidence in knowing you have a quality vehicle. Our goal is to provide you with a seamless process and positive experience for your automobile purchase. Financing recommendations and specific vehicle inquiries are available at your request. You can find us at www.automasters06.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Also, please feel free to contact Terrence Miles at 601-927-7794. And oh yeah, tell him Sonia sent you.
Compress the analytic data with your hip hop. If you know them like I know them, they gon' tell you if your team, if they wanna loud, and who the ball. So listen to Professor, yes sir, and pay attention, cause he gon' teach a lesson.
This is Dr. Bills inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Let's get to it. Can give some matchups here. We have Lincoln, PA Lions clearing Golden Eagles. That game is being played now, today. Last update I had was 7-0 with the Eagles in favor. Gaither, do you have an update score on that?
I think the last thing I saw, I think Chris posted was 13-0 Clarion. So yeah, rough start for Lincoln right now. They did not play in week 0.
We also have another first. No doubt about it. Another update here is Central State is taking on Grand Valley State, and that is tonight as well. Hooks is shaking his head, so he doesn't have a lot of confidence in that matchup. So we'll leave that right there. We have the Battle of Florida. Right now. Oh yeah, we tried not to give it out there, but you're a professional. Not looking good there.
That's a money game with no money.
Now that's a statement. Let's look at this Florida Memorial Lions, Edward Waters. In terms of this Battle of Florida, it's a matchup between NIA, D2 Florida in terms of Edward Waters Tigers. Shaking head a little bit. You might not be thinking too high as you talked about the Tigers. What do you think? Thoughts on this matchup, Kindric?
I just wish that Edward Waters would have got their compliance straight last season, that those guys that finished the season would have started the season. This year, I don't want to say they're in a bit of a rebuild, but they're looking for that magic. And when you start talking about Florida Memorial, the NAIA recruiting standards and the D2 standards, yeah, they're different. And they don't even know who they're playing. Florida Memorial don't even have a roster updated. So, I mean, you just never know who you going down there to play. The guy may be getting off probation tomorrow and on the field Saturday, so you don't know. So, God help Edward Waters, Hopefully they can get a win because we don't need to lose to them again, but hey, it is what it is.
Man, great point. And it's on the road this time. I think the last time they went down there and they got a major upset. Maybe they'll get it again. Going to you, Stephen. Tell me your thoughts on this Bowie State Bulldogs, Lenore Ryan Bears. A couple of years ago, the Bulldogs were really riding high in the conference. They were winning a lot of these non-conference games. Do they have a chance to get it done here, or do you think the Bulldogs have regressed where this will be a tough matchup?
I'm going to be interested to see. This is another school that did not play last week, so we don't have any film of the current edition of them. But again, just like I said, those folks down the road over at A&T took Bill Hayes from us 40 years ago. Those folks over in Baltimore picked up Damon Wilson, and so Kyle Jackson and his group, they've been 6-4 the last 2 years, which solid. Some of us would kill for 6-4 right about now, but not where they were. And so it's going to be interesting. Last year, I think they lost a tough one on the road to Davenport. I think their first year, they did go on the road and beat a PWI on the road. This year, Lenoir-Rhyne is consistently a really good program. They're one of the reasons why, you talk about the CIAA South, when it was one, RIP to CIAA South, there was trouble with them competing against the North is because you had to compete in the state against schools like a Lenoir-Rhyne, who really compete at a very high level. So I think they're going to have their work cut out for them. It's going to be interesting. Last year they were kind of up and down. They took care of their business against some of the lesser talent, but they went and lost on the road to Livingstone, struggled with St. Augustine's, and then in the North they were kind of the third wheel to Virginia State and Virginia Union. So it's going to be very interesting to see if they can compete. If they go out there and they beat this team, then you can say that Bowie State is once again a contender for the CIAA championship. If they play a solid game, you could maybe say that. And if they go out and get really beat up, it says that, we're kind of turning that corner to where, hey, it's the full rebuild. So
great analysis by both of you on those. I know y'all don't get the level of excitement that exists, but I think it's intriguing just because of the 3-0 start by the CIAA next weekend. And I think in a lot of ways these matchups are probably unfair, so we don't have to spend a great time on them, but I'd like to do this. We have two SIAC CIAA matchups. We have the Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls versus Morehouse Maroon Tigers. So let's look at that matchup, and then we're going to look at the Shaw Bears versus Albany State Golden Rams. Let's start with the Johnson C. Smith Golden Bulls that had a big victory. They vaulted into the top 7 in terms of number 7 in the ranking. So let's look at Morehouse Maroon Tigers and Johnson C. Smith. Starting with you, Stephen, what are your thoughts in terms of this matchup? Does Morehouse have any chance, or does basically the Golden Bulls just name their number?
Yeah, Johnson C. Smith, they should easily get their second pair of tiger skins to bring back to Beatties Ford Road. One set golden, one set maroon. If they lose to them, then, I don't know. After last week, after what they did last year, that would be a head scratcher, but it would also say that this is still a program that's still learning how to win. So I don't see it, though. I think the folks, I think Johnson C. Smith will come up with the win. Should be fairly easy.
Kindric, I imagine you don't think too much differently, but what are your thoughts in terms of this matchup?
I really need Johnson C. Smith to blow Morehouse out to make me feel a little bit better. I need them to do like a Virginia Union 69-7 game on them. But I'll be honest with you, if Morehouse scores on Johnson C. Smith, I'm gonna be extra disappointed in our loss. Like the Morehouse's offense versus that defense that I saw. I don't even know how Morehouse gets 100 yards of offense on Johnson C. Smith, but that's why they play the game. But I'm expecting a big time blowout by Johnson C. Smith, and I'm expecting them to run through the CIAA until they meet. If they play Virginia Union, I'm not sure if they do.
Good stuff.
Too much Magic City is the only way that they are in trouble against Morehouse.
Good stuff. Good stuff. You're right. It is on the road in Atlanta. So some people might do the wrong thing and sneak out of the hotel. But if I know anything about the coaches, they're going to have people sitting at the elevator in the stair blocks to make sure that they don't sneak in the wrong direction. With that being said, I'm going to stick with you, Kindric. And the last one in terms of CIAA SIAC is the Shaw Bears, Albany State Golden Rams. I figured this goes the other way, but you may see it differently. What are your thoughts in terms of this matchup?
I'm interested in this matchup. It's one of those ones. If I can say that I'm disappointed in a team, it would be Albany State. Last year when they played Valdosta State, they were really competitive in that game. Being in year 2 of Quentin Gray's team, I was expecting them to take a step forward. I knew that, from reading and from the GSC writers, that Valdosta State was expected to take another step forward. I was also expecting Albany State to take a step forward and be able to, compete well in that game. Whether they wanted or not, was up to be decided. But I don't know. I was a little perplexed by the Albany State, and especially that defense. You know, Albany State is known for having that dirty blue defense. So I think they're vulnerable in a few places. Can Shaw exploit that? That's a question, but I think that's a game that probably won't be as lopsided as people think.
Stephen Gaither, what are your thoughts in the matchup? You see this a little closer than what I was alluding to, or do you think the Golden Rams are going to get it done? Shaw Bears will shock the world.
Shaw got to make me a believer.
Okay.
They got to make me a believer. You know, they beat Elizabeth City State, but almost let them come back 17-0. They got to make me a believer. So no, and the debut on the blue turf. Yeah, I'm going. The SIAC will get their one and only win of the year against the CIAA in this matchup.
Ooh, so you don't even believe in terms of the bowl game? You're not going to put that in the mix, or has there been?
The bowl game, we'll see. We'll see with the bowl game.
You're talking about early in the season.
In the regular season, yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
All right. With that being said, let me stick with you, Stephen, and we have one more for you as well, Kindric, in terms of this thought process. We do not have a CIAA matchup unless I missed it, so you can correct me if I'm wrong. But the Fayetteville State Broncos, UNC Pembroke Braves, will you talk a little bit about the importance of that non-conference matchup? You alluded to Fayetteville State jumping out there in terms of another matchup early in the show. But what are your thoughts in terms of this non-conference matchup, Steve?
I think it's going to be an interesting game. You know, so as I said, in North Carolina, there's just so many there's so many schools, period, that play football. I think we got 14 in Division II alone. And so there's stiff competition. And UNC Pembroke is one of the schools that they didn't have a football program until about maybe 15, 20 years ago. And they have, like, not quite on the same level, but like Lenore Ryan have come in and taken some of that talent that used to be going to some of those CIAA schools in North Carolina. So they've been a tough out for Fayetteville State. Fayetteville State finally got their first win against them in 2022. You know, with Sam State, you know, we've kind of gone back and forth with them. I think we're tired. I think we still got the lead. But Fayetteville State, they've been a challenge. And, you know, last year they hired the former head coach of Chowan, who, if you remember, the 2022 CIAA championship game was against Fayetteville State and Chowan. His name is Mark Hall. And so he's very familiar with the Fayetteville State program. Pembroke wasn't great last year, but they did manage to eke out a win. So I think for Fayetteville State, you know, this is their chance to make a statement. You know, they came in, they were picked to finish third in the CIAA, and of course there are no divisions now. So I think they felt a little disrespected that they got picked that low. So this is your chance, Fayetteville State, to go out and prove that you are again going to be a contender for the CIAA, and that you can beat PWIs in the regular season and in the playoffs. And so I'm going to be very interested to see how they do with yet another new offensive coordinator.
Speaking of another non-conference matchup, you talked about Chowan. Chowan is on the road to Elizabeth City State Vikings. So that's another one to kind of keep you on. But I'm going to go to you, Kindric. Last one here in terms of before we get ready to close things out. We do have an SIAC matchup that features the number 3 ranked Clark Atlanta Panthers against Allen Yellow Jackets. This is fascinating for us that cover this in a lot of ways, just because you have Coach Keaton taking on the old foe Allen Yellow Jackets and his old team from last year. It kind of jumped out and surprised a lot of folks in terms of what they did in the SIAC for much of the year. Some big wins, tough losses as well. Obviously, the quarterback and the many players are playing some of their old teammates in this matchup in Atlanta. What are your thoughts in terms of this conference game featuring Allen Yellow Jackets and Clark Atlanta Panthers?
Yeah, so I think one of the other connections there is Cedric Pearl. It was named the head coach at Allen. Cedric Pearl was the former head coach at Central State. He also coached with Coach Keaton when they were all at Miles together. So there's a lot of connection there. And Cedric Pearl is also a Tuskegee grad. So, you know, I got to put on for Coach Pearl.
I like it.
I do think when we looked at some of the previous matchups that has happened when former coaches have played their former teams, no matter how dominant the other team may be, it's normally a close game. You talk about a 1-9 Miles coming in to play Ruffin, taking us 2 overtimes. We went up to play Slater that year, 2 overtimes. And even when Mike White got to Benedict, he took a winless Benedict, and basically gave Albany State all that they could handle. So those games are really emotional. I think Pearl is going to want to put his stamp. I think every coach that takes over behind, a pretty legendary, not pretty, Coach Keaton is legendary at Allen because he revived that program. I'm pretty sure Cedric Pearl is going to want to, come in and put his stamp on. And he left a little talent up there. And if I got an advice to him, run the ball, sir. Keep David Wright on the sideline. Just run the ball.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I'll put one last one out there myself. You got Arkansas Baptist traveling to Arkansas Pine Bluff. Arkansas Baptist is an NIA program that brought back football a couple of years ago. I think the Golden Lions will get it done. But just to show some love to our NIA programs, be interesting to see what Langston does as they continue getting conference play and do some things this weekend. We already talked about Florida Memorial as they take on, if you would, the Edward Waters, and Kindric did a great job in terms of breaking that down. With that, I'll let you go ahead. What do you want to say, Steve?
Those are 2 great logos, UAPB and that's Arkansas Baptist.
It is. It is Arkansas Baptist.
Yes. Yeah. They'll get to take out some of that frustration on the good Christian folks.
The Buffalo.
UAPB.
I do love that logo. Putting that on the shirt.
That's tough. Those are 2 great. That's like a top 10 logo matchup.
Exactly. Particularly when you go back with the history of UAPB and the student design that just lets you know the talent that's out there from the student. We might need to see a little bit more of that done across our campus when there's time to redo or update logos. With that being said, appreciate both of you gentlemen for your time, the way you represent and put in information and give us just an entirely different perspective on the HBCU landscape is second to none. It's extremely important for me to make sure we get out there, and it gives me a whole different way when I start looking at these ball games to take a deeper dive. Plus, I don't want to be a part of Stephen Gaither's outcuts, so I want to make sure we recognize that. And again, if you hadn't seen that, we joke, but seriously, it's great content. So go check it out on Winston-Salem State University Rams Nation. That's WSSU Rams Nation. Go check that on YouTube to get your stuff on that. Follow these guys. They're both, if you haven't already, in terms of what they do on Twitter, now known as X. Obviously, you know the work that you'll see with D2 HBCU Football in regards to his spaces as you do that. What night? Do you have a regular night that you go over to SIAC and D2, Kindric?
Yes, Sunday nights is our SIAC talk, 7 p.m. Central. Yeah.
All right. Make sure you check that out for those that are not aware of it and want to see a little bit more about D2. Stephen Gaither, you do a show as well in terms with Ferg. And sometimes Kindric jumps on there with you in terms of magnifying HBCU DT programs on YouTube. When can you catch that show?
Yeah, well, you can catch our show on Wednesdays at 7:30. Wednesdays at 7:30 on HBCU Gameday.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Catch that in terms of following all the work that these gentlemen are doing. Thank you for listening to Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Make sure you share our podcast with your friends and colleagues. I am Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, the Dean of HBCU Sports, coming from inside the lab in the College of HBCU Sports with Mike Watch and Charles Bishop. Fascinating when you talk about these 8 games featuring FCS HBCU programs taking on D2. You heard it from the FCS perspective on Thursday. Now you see it on the D2 perspective. And we'll see next week as these poll rankings come out, and we'll talk about it Sunday morning, let you know what took place over the weekend. So stick with us as we continue to give you more. Again, we want to thank you for listening. Dr. Bill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Watson and Charles Bishop. As you know, every Tuesday and Thursday at 6. Now we have a Wednesday program that will give you the independence at 6 as well. We will look at giving you some breakdowns on Monday and Friday. So stick with us to see what that looks like. Follow me, Dr. Kenyatta Cavil, on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. That's DrKenyattaCavil. We'll give you some information about the business side of HBCU Sports. Inside the HBCU Sports Lab 1 on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube is Inside the HBCU Sports Lab. Dream big, Continue to move forward. We will talk with you soon. Stephen?
Of course.
Kindric? Dismissed. Oh, man, he knocked it out the park. A+.